Podcast, Cristo Rey Podcast, the Cristo Rey Podcast is about to arrive. Podcast, Cristo Rey Podcast, the Cristo Rey Podcast, episode 5. Last week, they had Mr. Dieble's brother, and this week they have my sister. Her name's Amelia, but you better call her Miss Corrigan. Show some respect. They better not be planning to mess with my little sister, cause if they do, they're gonna have to go through me. Watch your back, I'm watching you Diable Podcast, the Cristo Rey Podcast, the Cristo Rey Podcast, right in your ears. Podcast, the Cristo Rey Podcast, the Cristo Rey Podcast. I'm watching you, Mr. Diable, without Nurse Ross, who seems okay, I guess.
Today's episode, we're going to discuss a little bit more about the impact of coronavirus on education, and we're going to talk from sort of our perspective as high school students and teachers and staff. And then we'll also get some insight on Ms. Corrigan's work with international students and different programs at the collegiate level. But as always, I thought we'd start with sort of a fun introductory question. So why don't we go around and say, if you had to be quarantined with one celebrity or public figure, who would you choose? So we're all in this time of social isolation. If you got to pick like one celebrity or someone that you could be isolated with. I put public figure because I know Mr. Corrigan's not going to put like a hip hop artist or something. He's probably going to pick some random Gilded Age vice president or something. So I figured open it up.
Joining us today are Ruby, Nehemiah, Brianna, Nurse Ross, and we have some special guests from the Corrigan family. Mr. Corrigan is here and his sister, Ms. Corrigan, who works with college international students. And so we're going to discuss a little bit from each of those perspectives on today's topic.
You know, I'll say who came to my mind first, and I don't even know if I really thought about, I don't know what I would say, but the person that came to my mind first was Michelle Obama. I just think she's cool. She'd be cool to talk to. Yeah. So.
I don't know why, but I keep getting like, can we choose like a show that like we would like to be like in?
Sure.
Like for example, like for me, if I could like, spend a day, it would be like Phineas and Ferb, because every day they do something different. So I would like to be like, I don't know, hang out with them, even though that's an animated show. That's what I would go with.
Honestly, probably Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's the writer of Hamilton, because I could just sing his songs all day long and hopefully get him to write a song for me.
Yeah, off the top of my head, probably like Kylie Jenner. She looks like she's having a good time. She has a tennis court, food is stocked, and she has the baby. It's really cute. So
I guess I would have to say probably Grover Cleveland, during his 22nd administration, not the 24th. That's just obvious. So
Obviously.
Yeah.
So he didn't specify what kind of celebrity. So because I know the students know Mrs. Corrigan, Mr. Corrigan's wife, I would quarantine with her, but not with Mr. Corrigan, just Mrs. Corrigan, because she's cool and we would hang out.
Oh boy, can you erase what I said earlier and delete that and have me say Mrs. Corrigan too? Because that looks bad.
So Ms. Corrigan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do for the university?
All right. So I have worked in higher ed for a really long time. I first started as a graduate assistant. So a graduate assistant is someone who you're going through a master's or PhD program and you essentially get a job that essentially pays for that education. So I was a graduate assistant in an advising office, found I actually really loved it. And so I sticked with that career. So I work with a lot of different students. So international stuff is sort of my field of interest. That's like what I'm like really passionate about. But just to give you a little more context, so I work with students who are studying in the United States on international student visas. So whether they are here for their entire experience or they're just here for a semester, like a study abroad student. I also work with American and international students who want to study abroad. So these are students who are studying here and then they want to spend some time in another country. And then I work sometimes with students where after they've come back from studying abroad, they want to keep seeing me, so they'll keep seeing me. So I do a lot of that stuff. Another main specialty that I have is actually graduation. So I work a lot with students about how to get them to graduation. And so I have a lot of conversations about A, how to finish, and B, how to get the most out of their experience. So when they graduate, they get that dream job or go to graduate school or whatever. So that's what I do.
In what ways have you seen that this has impacted the way that students focus in school? Or just in what ways do you think that it's impacted students, especially the ones that are in college and university?
My international students, they tend to have a lot of concerns about, do I go home or do I stay? Right? So the students who were back home, they were sometimes having difficulties getting in. So they couldn't start the semester with us. If I had students who were kind of already here, they had questions about, well, should I go home for the summer? Should I go home after I graduate? And for those kind of students, so that does kind of divide their attention a little bit. The other thing that I want to mention with my international students is that, so the three main countries that I work with are students from China, students from Saudi Arabia, and students from Oman. My Chinese students tend to be more like what we would call in my industry a traditional student. They graduate high school, they're 18 years old, they go straight into college. So they tend to be younger, they tend to just be by themselves. My Saudi Arabian students tend to be older. They tend to more of them than the Chinese students would be married. Some of them would have kids. So they are thinking kind of from an older perspective. And then my Omani students tend to be sort of somewhere in the middle. Some of them are older, some of them are younger. So, Chinese students are kind of reacting a lot like how I imagine you guys are reacting.
I actually have a question for Mr. Corrigan. Mr. Corrigan, how have you seen a change within your students in how they turn in the work and how they're kind of reacting to the situation?
Well, thank you, Ruby. That's a good question. It's so good to be here. Like I said, I wanted to be here today. I told Mr. At the beginning, of course, I said I needed to keep an eye on Mr. Dybel today. So here I am, and I'm glad to answer. So it's very interesting. Most students have really risen to it. I've been very, very impressed. And I noticed that, and also listening to you guys, the first week, people were really gung-ho and really, okay, online learning, let's do this thing. And then it was kind of in the midway point. It was kind of like this curve, I guess you could say, where people started to stress out and they started to lose the momentum. It was sort of novel, if you follow me. It was kind of exciting, right? Oh, there's this new thing. And then it became, as Nehemiah likes to say, the new normal, right? And once something becomes normal, it loses that momentum a little bit. And that was my experience, where people really had to be kind of like after spring break, really had to kind of make sure we had that FaceTime. And like Ms. Corrigan has said, talking about that FaceTime is actually really important. That's one of the reasons why, kids joke with me. I always wear a tie, right? You can see me now, no one can see me, but that I'm still the same old Mr. Corrigan, that there's some routine, there's still some structure. I've been really impressed, actually, at how students have risen to it. But I did get that feeling, kind of after spring break, there was kind of a dip, and to be more self-motivated. And then most students, almost to a student, have dug themselves out of it. I've been so impressed by the self-reliance. And Ms. Corrigan, there, something I had never considered, right? That these freshman year skills, by college freshman skills, where you're sort of you're on your own. you guys are working through that, and you've kind of you went through that. I saw that happen, right? Kind of right after spring break. People are losing it, right? They're disappearing into some hole somewhere, and then everyone's crawling out. So when you guys go to college freshman year, you know how this goes now. This is you know how to do this. So I've been very, very pleased. I've been very proud actually of the students, and we're still with you. You know, I think that's the message I want to give to all the sophomores, of course, who I teach. You know, I'm still the same old Mr. Corrigan, wearing my tie, sitting here virtually, as are all the teachers, right, and all the staff. That's been my experience.
Yeah, I think the high school to college transition, I feel like it won't be as hard for us anymore since already went through this. I feel like maybe it's going to be a little bit smoother since we're already accustomed to change now. So maybe we won't be as, like lost in a way.
Regardless of what college looks like in the fall or the spring, you're still going to be supported by the college. You're still going to get an education. You're still going to have resources. You're still going to have academic advisors and tutors and stuff like that. It's probably not going to look like the movies where like everyone like goes to parties every night or something. I don't know.
So if you were advising Cristo Rey students right now, if you had, if you were helping them kind of make decisions about the future in terms of, how they can react to the situation or what they should be thinking about, all three of the students on the call here in the fall, they're going to start looking at colleges and applications and, just sort of what pieces of advice would you have for students who are starting to think that way, but might be nervous now with kind of the uncertainty of the situation?
All right. So the first thing that I want to emphasize, if you get nothing else from this conversation, is you still need to be pursuing your college goals. Anything that you would have done anyway to prepare for college, keep doing those things. Secondly, you guys are actually benefiting a lot from this situation in a kind of a weird way. Everyone was sort of thrust into the situation all at once. So you already are sort of experiencing what it's like to learn remotely. So if the worst case scenario happens and the college that you end up going to is doing remote learning, well, you've already done it. You know what it's like. You know how to do those things. And to be honest with you, the working world is really moving towards a sort of using more technology and using remote working and, teleconferencing and stuff like that. So you're learning these very valuable skills that you're going to use in your working life. The other thing that I want to talk about is, so I work with all 8 grades of college students. There are several things that freshmen struggle with, but one of them that I hear consistently from all students is, when I was in high school, I had a schedule. I did this and that and other, and my parents were there and they were telling me this, that, and the other, and the teachers were there and they were telling me this, that, and the other. And now I'm in college and no one tells me anything and I have no schedule and I don't know what to do with myself. But doesn't that sound a lot like remote learning right now? You have to still do your AP homework, even though your teacher's not there telling you. You have to share space with another person like you would if you had a roommate in college. You have to kind of set your own schedule. You've probably quickly have learned you can't sleep all day. So you're learning time management skills that you can use in college, that these are the things that college freshmen tend to struggle with. And you're learning it now when it's sort of low stakes.
Based on what Ms. Corrigan said, have you guys felt that way at all during this time where you're doing something or you're working on a project or you're, trying to focus on some part of an assignment where you've come to the realization of like being aware of how it might help you?
I kind of could relate because before I don't think I really had much of a schedule. And now that like this whole transition happened to online learning, now I feel like I kind of have a set layout of my day of what to do, when to do things. And I feel like now that I think about it, it's the same. I think we're learning this ahead of time. So I think this will help us be more prepared for college because I feel like a lot of freshmen, like you said, don't really know how well to manage their time, to work efficiently, how to balance their life and their private life to school. So I feel like this is in a way helping us, but it's kind of more of an advantage for us because we're learning this ahead of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I was going to say that, like I said before, it's better to know what you can and cannot handle. And this taught me what I can. So like when I was in school, or if I was doing an assignment for Mr. Dybel, like I might go there and I would think, oh, this is difficult. I'm never going to get it on time, never going to finish it. But when you're at home, you start to realize what your brain actually understands and like how much work you could do. But it helps you to know what you can and can't handle. So basically you won't ever feel like next time when you go to college and you don't understand a class, you're like, but I can handle it because when I was at home, I was essentially in the same mindset of being like in a college workspace and I was able to do the same thing. So I think it's mostly just about learning how to handle that stuff and knowing what you can and can't do.
I feel like, yeah, I definitely would agree with both what Ruby and Brianna is saying, but for me, it's like, I'm not even necessarily looking as long-term as college, but just specifically next year, you know, having that ability to be able like to adapt to change, because no matter how much people say they want to go back to how normal was, there's going to be a new normal because of how this was, you know? So for me, it's like, how can I best prepare myself now to ensure that each day that I'm taking the processes and steps it takes to make it easier than the day before. So for me, and like early when this online stuff I felt very lax and like, it was like, oh, I'll get it done. I don't need to set as much structure for myself, not realizing that the only thing that kept me going well in school was because of structure. And for me, one of the things I kind of tried to adapt into my own life is like, I'm setting different class period times as if I was in actual school. Now, I don't necessarily go in the same order it was in school, but I'm like, okay, normally I would have 45 minutes to do this. So after 45 minutes, move on. If you didn't finish, then guess what? You have time. That would be your quote unquote homework time that you would have normally done at home anyway, you know? And then you get to reach out to your teachers having like office hours.
If you want to graduate, make sure that you schedule your senior success interview with Mrs. Cruz before May 15th. And if you are feeling the pressure of online learning, there is still time to schedule a meeting with a counselor. It's okay not to be okay. And lastly, to all those AP students out there, keep checking your inbox. And if you have any questions, come and see me, Mrs. Graham, any weekday from 11 a.m. to noon during my AP office hour. And take care,
Other thing I do want to mention, so the feedback that I got from my classmates in my Japanese class, because I mentioned I was a student, is, you know, I have a feeling that they will never skip class ever again, because there's like, I just want to go back to class. I just want to be around people. Like everyone wants to take online courses until that's all you can take. And then you're like, oh, being in a classroom and talking to other people is actually really fun. And you should do that more often. So that hopefully will teach you shouldn't skip class, because the alternative is this. So, and I'm getting a sense from everyone that no one really likes this very much.
Is there one part of all of this that you think might stay with education?
I can start. I have something that's it's sort of specific to nursing, but I know that something that is going to stick with the group of nurses that I work with. There's 110 of us, and we have a lot of difficulty getting together because the district is so large. And we have so much difficulty getting together because we have kids, for example, in a lot of the schools who have tracheostomies who need suctioned, or kids who have diabetes and they're like in pre-K or kindergarten and they can't inject their own insulin, right? So only a nurse can do that. And so when students are in school, we can't get together for a meeting, period. And so our bosses talked a lot about just being more efficient with meetings, and like, why can't we do this on Zoom? If we need to have a staff meeting, or we feel like there's something that we need to get out to the masses, if you will, let's do it on Zoom.
I was like, to piggyback off of some of that, like the innovation aspect, I was like, for me, I know a lot of the issues with the online school itself was that there are so few of the actual like apps or .coms or different servers that they were crashing at the start. So I feel like one of the things that's going to stick is that more Khan Academies are going to exist, more Zoom things, more Google Classrooms. There's going to be more resources open and available just in case, or not even just as in case. It's like this is always an option or a plan B, or the route for online school is going to expand, because traditionally kids were never exposed to online school. So they might be like, hey, I like this. This might be the better route for me than your traditional, I'm going to school from 8 to 3.
Yeah, similar to Nehemiah, I thought that things like technology is going to change because, at the start, what I noticed is that our school, we already had iPads. We were already kind of prepared. So I think more companies or like schools in general are going to prepare to like be able to have more technology. I know my brothers, when they first started, they said that you could only have one laptop per school. And per household, that you can only have one of them. So, but my brother is 18, so he was able to get one for himself and consider it as like a household. So I feel like maybe the addition of electronics to school might be a brand new thing going on in the future years for schools.
I feel like overall, this is just going to teach everyone in general, specifically towards like bosses, that sometimes just shoot an email, a lot of things don't have to be done in like, you don't have to get a meeting again every Friday. I feel like we're learning that, wow, I can actually, shoot an email to my colleagues that we need to do this and this and that. I feel like they're going to learn how to use their time more wisely.
Yeah, I, of course, as a history teacher, we oftentimes in class, there'll be something in history and students, some great innovation. Like, oh, this was so great. This like changed the world, And students will go, well, that was pretty obvious, wasn't it? Looking back, right? So, well, all those great ideas seem obvious afterwards, right? And, we're kind of down on the online learning thing a little bit because it's put upon us. Okay, that's part of our culture, I think. We just don't like being told what to do, right? And there's a lot of goodness that's coming, a lot of creativity, I think, that is coming out with I think with the way the teachers are teaching and the way the students are interacting with us. And I think the innovation that will last, I hope to see this, I think we're still operating on the idea is, well, you have traditional classes and you have online classes, and that they're two different animals, right? But I think what we're going to see is like a hybrid. They're going to be merged. Why can't we kind of mix those two things together? And I have a sensation, I wouldn't bet money on it, but that in the future, there really won't be any difference. There won't be an online class or a traditional class that they'll be combined in some way. And I think we're seeing the beginnings of that. And that's actually very exciting to me.
So I want to follow up with Mr. Corrigan. Again, podcast people can't see me, but I will admit my biggest pet peeve is the term real college experience. So I want to pose this to the students here, and you can just nod so we don't have to unmute ourselves, but not if you are a real person, not if you're going to college. You're having a real college experience. Okay? So I'm hoping that with this sort of hybrid model that Mr. Corrigan is proposing.
For our listeners, everyone nodded.
Everyone nodded. I hope you at home also nodded, by the way. And the reason why I phrase it this way is I have a lot of students where they commute. And so they get really hung up on themselves because they're commuting. And they're like, I'm not having the real college experience. I commuted, all right? I commuted, and I would commute all over again in my undergrad and technically my graduate school too. I had a real college experience. Did it look different than the movies? Yes. But I'm a real person. I went to college. I had a real college experience. So I think with this like sort of hybrid model that Mr. Corrigan is proposing, that we might move away from this idea of like a real college experience, that you can only have college in one certain way.
All right. Well, I think we can go ahead and wrap up our discussion there. Let's thank Ms. Corrigan for dropping by, and we do have a tradition where we end the podcast with everybody just kind of sharing one thing that they've been doing while social distancing that has helped them cope with what was going on. So it can be something small, it can be related to what we were talking about, it can be related to school, it can also just be something like totally random.
Something I've been doing for social distancing. My father currently lives in a nursing home, and as you're all probably aware, we can't really visit nursing homes right now. And he has a form of dementia where it's hard for him to use his hands, and it's hard for him to read. So I came up with the idea of, because my father was a big reader. He read a lot. He read novels, he read anything. And because he grew up in Ireland, the nursing home staff would not be as familiar with the kind of cultural stories that he would have grown up with. So what I've been doing as sort of like a social distancing experiment is I've been recording myself reading Irish folktales to him. And the feedback I've been getting is he really likes them. He's really enjoying them. I'm really awful at the names. Irish names are terrible. But it's been a way for me to sort of still connect with my dad, even if I can't be physically with him, and sort of bring him a little joy when he's sort of isolated from us.
I'm sure none of us are surprised to learn that the father of the Corrigans was a reader, considering what we know about the family so far.
I thought the same thing. That's really sweet. I loved hearing that.
Yeah, our dad's who's an engineer, a big math guy. So
he invented a screw.
He did invent it, yeah, a special type of screw that does not unscrew, if you can imagine. That's his claim to fame. So, well, there you go, trivia, Corrigan family trivia. In our house, yeah, actually we have a fun thing. My wife, Mrs. Corrigan, not to be confused with Ms. Corrigan, who is my sister, right? We have been going for a walk every day. We do a half-hour walk, just her and I, just to get out of the house. We go around the neighborhood. I won't tell you what time it is because I'm afraid Mr. Dybel will come by and steal my John Quincy Adams biographies. But it's something we make sure we do every day, just her and I, and it's a fun little reconnection because even though we are together 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, we also have the kids who are wonderful and beautiful, and we spend time with them too. But it's good to have that Mr. and Mrs. Corrigan time. We make time for that every day. So if you send me a Google Hangout and you don't hear a response, I'm probably on my walk. So.
Oh, that's sweet, Mr. Corrigan. One thing that I've been doing is getting a little more culinary in the kitchen. Yesterday I baked my first brownie and I burnt it, but it was a great experience though. It was, the top was not burnt, but it was still good.
Burnt brownies can be good though, because I
know.
They're
like a little more chewy. I like that. Yes.
Opposite to you, Ruby, I've been making my brother make brownies, so that's been my thing I've been doing recently. So.
Mine's just still pancake.
One thing that I feel like, especially this last week that I've been doing, is I've been really trying to practice like self-compassion and grace, because I have 2 little ones at home, and one of them is in preschool, but I felt a lot of pressure when all of this started to make sure that she was getting like age appropriate stimulation, and she was learning and doing all of these crafts and activities, and I don't know, I just kind of have been like, some days like all we do is one thing, instead of like we were on a schedule when all of this began, where we were doing like certain stuff every morning, and it was great, but it's been more difficult to keep up with that, and I've just had to like let it go, which can be difficult for me. And they're doing great. My girls are doing great. They're fine, even though they don't get the enrichment that they did. So just practicing a little self-compassion on that.
So I had one last question. I think our listeners will be interested in this. This is from Ms. Corrigan, of course, before she leaves. Based on your expertise, you've been around and you have many good life experiences. In your opinion, no pressure, Who do you think is probably a better social studies teacher, me or Mr. Daggett?
We all know the answer to this. I don't think we need it confirmed for your embarrassment, Mr. Corrigan.
Well, that's okay. We've got time.
I think she's coming to the conclusion that neither of us are particularly remarkable, which is probably the truest answer to that question.
Should I just start singing? So just start singing the theme song.
Yeah, let's sing us out.
I think the theme is I'm getting sent off by the stage, by the music. Oh, I'm so sorry. You can hear me. Oh no.
Cast the Cristo
I
Rey
like
pod.
me.
Cast it came right at you. My sister did a pretty good job, better than Dible's brother. Now that much is true. So let's compare Dible's brother with my sweet little sister. It's pretty obvious which interview was the better one. My family has the blood of ancient Irish kings flowing through our veins, while Dibble in German literally means devil. Look it up! Dibble literally means devil. Podcast. This was the Cristo Rey podcast. The Cristo Rey podcast. Dibbles are whack. Podcast. Cristo Rey podcast. The Cristo Rey podcast. Corrigan's rule.
Hey, Amelia, let's play Star Wars like when we were kids. I gotcha. I gotcha. Oh, it's over.